Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
If you didn't know before, now you know why they call this the Fun Belt.
I'm very excited about the Sun Belt.
You know, while other conferences have been breaking up, our conference has become stronger.
The state of Sun Belt football is the strongest in our history.
I saw Fun Belt Conference, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I got to join the show. It sounds a lot of fun.
The last of the major pro sports leagues kicks off this week, and BetOnline is your top spot for all your NBA action this season. With MLB postseason, NFL, college football, and NHL in full swing, BetOnline is your number one source for wagering, news, odds, trends, and predictions. Get everything NBA at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access for every sport, anytime. Head to BetOnline today to get in the action. And don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Good evening. This is another edition Fun Belt Podcast from the Believe Network, the most powerful network in podcasting. With me, Dusty Thibodeaux from the Warhawk Report. Good evening, Dusty Thibodeaux. How are you?
How goes? Love the excitement there after your team tried to kill the star player of the Sun Belt Conference.
We almost killed the golden boy of the Sun Belt. It was a scary moment in Jonesboro, Arkansas. We'll talk a little bit about that shortly. Also with us tonight, Shane Mettlen from the Daily News Record, the Pulitzer Prize winning, most powerful newspaper on the East Coast. Heisman Trophy voter Shane Mettlen with us tonight in the studio. Shane, how are you this evening?
Doing pretty well.
Have you been shaking down senators and representatives trying to get some juice for James Madison in their quest to play in postseason?
I've been hearing from some of those people, and I think they are as much wanting to get their names out there as I am trying to track down their names at this point. But
Okay.
but you know, there are things happening.
There seems to be two camps in the social media world about that, Shane. There's the camp that says this is ridiculous. JMU, one of the best football programs out there. They really should have an opportunity to show themselves out in a bowl game. And then there's this other camp that says, wah, call the ambulance. You guys knew the rules. It happens for every FCS program. You got to wait 2 years. Shane, where are you? You know, you've been very neutral. I've been watching your work on the social media, and you've seemed to be pretty even-keeled about it.
Because there's some validity to both sides of that. I mean, you know, it's a dumb rule. It's an outdated, antiquated rule. And I'm not even going to say it's a dumb rule because there was a reason for it at one point. It's antiquated. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate that as good a season as JMU is having, that there's something of a ceiling on it right now. But I mean, the people who say that this was the rule that existed and JMU knew these were the rules have somewhat of a point too. There's different things. I mean, I tend to think that JMU was under the impression they were going to get a waiver under the previous NCAA regime. Now there's a new president who doesn't want to grant waivers for anything, and that's been the major change. But like everybody kind of has a point. I'm not just being like unconfrontational. There's no real good answer or solution to this because nobody could have anticipated a team making a transition like JMU has done it. It never happened.
I do have a solution, Shane.
Oh, okay. Let's hear the solution.
Jacksonville State is in the same boat that they are ineligible for the postseason for a bowl game.
Yeah.
There is the mythical 100th bowl or whatever it is in Frisco, Texas. To satisfy everybody, the Cox and the Dukes meet up in northern Texas in the mythical bowl for a mythical national championship. They even get the mythical championship, much like the 2017 UCF Golden Knights. They get a trophy. They get a license plate. They get T-shirts. That's how we solve all this.
I know that you're playing some of that for laughs.
No.
But to me, I'd rather just not go to a bowl game. If you're going to manufacture a bowl game between two teams that aren't allowed to play in a bowl game, two teams that, quite frankly, Jacksonville State doesn't belong on the same field as JMU. I'm sorry.
They're undefeated.
They're not the same quality of team at all. And so just to say, because they're in the same boat, let's put them into a bowl game. And that'll make them happy? Would that make
Frisco Bowl? The Frisco Bowl is a made-up bowl anyway. So let's just go all out.
But I will say this from a JMU perspective.
Okay.
I don't think there's too many people at JMU who are that sad that they're not going to play in something like the Frisco Bowl or the Myrtle Beach Bowl or any of those. What they want is a Sun Belt championship. And now that they're 7-0 and ranked, what they'd want is a potential Fiesta Bowl, like the New Year's Six Bowl. I don't
That's
think
what I said, the Frisco Bowl.
Yeah. So
is that what you were saying? Okay.
I mean, if JMU loses their next two games and
they'll all be
both of those things go out the window, that everybody's going to get quiet. I mean,
it'll be the moot point.
Yeah.
And that's the shame, because JMU is going to have to go completely undefeated to really make the case. Because one defeat, will be like, well, you see, James Madison didn't deserve it anyway. And that'll be it for that.
Yeah. I mean, the real interesting thing to me is that, the NCAA aside, the NCAA right now is simply upholding their existing rules, which I think can be justified to some degree. What I found very interesting this week was when the college football playoff comes out and says, like, even if JMU is bowl eligible, they're not college football playoff and New Year's Six eligible, which I found that part kind of strange, because, like, if JMU can be selected for a bowl game, should they be able to be selected for any bowl game?
Yeah, they kind of made up their own rule there, right?
Yeah, and I really I don't know. I really got the impression that I sent that email Friday morning in the car on the way back from Huntington, got the reply Sunday night. My impression was sort of like, their communications guy went to like the committee and was kind of like, have you guys even thought about this? And they came up with something on the fly over the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds to me like they don't even want to be bothered with it. They kind of just want to be able to stick to Lane or Air Force or whoever at the bottom of the poll and just be like, okay, one of those guys, I guess, gets to go to the New Year's Six. But we're really focused on somehow putting Alabama in there. But that's just me. Hey, that's just me being cranky, Dusty, about the College Football Playoff Committee, about the AP Top 25. There's really no reason to remain this bitter. Let's talk about that big ULM win. Oh wait. It wasn't a big ULM win. It was another loss for the Warhawks.
You know what's even better than that, Jeremy? I just realized that as I was creating the graphic for the Sun Belt Football West standings, that I left Arkansas State off.
How dare you?
I don't care, because you want to bring it, I can bring it too. I just deleted you from the entire league.
You're using technology to destroy us. That's not fair.
Look, the Warhawks. We've had this discussion on Warhawk Report a lot. I've had a lot with conversations through text, talks with the commish of the Sicko committee. I don't know what else there is. The players have changed. The coaches have changed. Administrators have changed. It's the same script, just with a different year to it. ULM's going to rattle off 2, maybe 3 wins, then have that almost, oh God, we almost were 6-6 and could have been in a bowl, but if, we would have only played better before. Rinse, repeat, add it for next year. This year, bad first quarter where there were fumbles, there were picks, and everything else to get down 28-7 to Georgia Southern in the first half of the game. Georgia Southern couldn't find the end zone to save their life in the second half. Warhawks stormed back. They're down 3 with 1:50 left. A true freshman quarterback in the game who winds up making his debut, going 18 of 33 for 320, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. The pick was a pick 6 because it was a batted ball that fell in the hands of a Georgia Southern defensive back that ran it right back in for the 10-point victory. But I don't know what else to say about this team. They're good. They outgained the Eagles 432 to 417. It was the damn fumbles, the picks, and just 0 of 3 on 4th down conversions, 4 of 16. So you can't move the ball consistently. They averaged 5.8 yards a play compared to Georgia Southern's 5.3. I don't know what else to do with this. You tell me, Jeremy. You tell me, Shane. You're the real journalist there, Shane. How do we fix this?
I don't know. I mean, there's always that like step where like you start winning close games, and that's the turning point for a program that's got some talent. And right now, like just look around the Sun Belt, like there are no bad teams. Like
maybe Southern Miss.
Maybe Southern Miss. I mean, they're playing bad right now, but I think they have the talent the talent to be a solid team. And like, if Southern Miss and ULM are your worst teams in the conference, it's a really tough conference top to bottom. And like, I think it's kind of like that, culture thing. Not that there's a bad culture with, the Bowden there, but like somewhere along the line, these guys have to like sort of realize that the expectation is to win, and like that, things are going to break our way, and that, we're going to win this game, even if something goes a little wrong. And I don't know, there were moments when I watched on Saturday, like neither team looked like they wanted to win that game or knew how to win the game. And, Georgia Southern, who's a little bit ahead in that process of establishing the culture, I think ended up making those plays.
Yeah, but you look at it. Bowden's first year 4-8. Bowden's second year 4-8. I guarantee you this year we're sitting right now at 2-5. It's going to be a 5-7 year, maybe a 4-8 year once again.
Yeah, I look at this team though, and this Warhawks team is the scariest Warhawks team that I've seen out of those 3 Terry Bowden years, and somehow they've got the worst record. But they seem like they play capable football. And Dusty, I didn't realize that Jaya Wright didn't start. What happened to him? Is he injured again?
No, he got pulled. After the series of fumbles and blunders there that helped Georgia Southern build that 28-7 lead, they told him to take a seat and put in the true freshman Blake Murphy, which I think is probably a good move. But you got to realize that you just pretty much burned a red shirt for half a year, so you better make damn sure this kid is actually ready. B, Jira Wright is probably baked now in the head that you're not going to be able to really count on him down the stretch. So you better make sure your offensive line is ready to protect a true freshman behind center. And so maybe it's the right move, maybe it's not. We'll see this week when hopefully we can break the million year drought against Arkansas State that we'll preview in the next episode.
Yeah, that's not happening.
But I'm just kind of going off on a random rant. It's just frustrating. It's I can't even say I'm pissed off. I find myself just sitting here stuttering, not being able to come up with more words of how to describe what this whole situation's like.
Let's be honest too about the situation that ULM is in. They have, by a pretty significant margin, the smallest budget in the Sun Belt.
Yes.
And I think it shows up in things like road games. Or JMU took a charter flight to Huntington this week that took 45 minutes to get there rather than doing a 4-hour bus ride. And that's an advantage in a situation like that. I don't think ULM's doing those kinds of things very much. I don't know. Did they charter to Statesboro? Are they flying commercial? Like there's a lot of little things that are just the advantages that programs have that make difference in close games. Some coach the other day, I think it was Charles Huff, Marshall's a program that doesn't have the kind of budget you might expect for a school like Marshall.
Yeah.
And he's talking about, in college, you just take old school ice baths. And I was kind of like, really? Because like, at JMU, they've got like hyperbaric chambers and stuff like this. And like, and those things do make a difference to some degree as far as like your players recuperating and not, missing time and, not being dead ass tired after a road trip.
Yeah, but I do understand that like I remember at Texas State, it was a big deal to get a nutrition table, like a nutritionist to come in there and set out a menu of food for their kids. They'd never done that before. And now it took, 4 or 5 years, but they're finally playing capable football. It's just little things like that. I don't know where the Warhawks are on that. But I will say that it is kind of funny that if would you say the quarterback's new name, the freshman quarterback's name is Blake
Murphy.
Blake Murphy. That will be 3. I don't know if Zion Chris is a true freshman, but that would be 3 freshmen starting at quarterback in the Sun Belt West, and that's pretty crazy.
We are the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
So moving on beyond that game, before I have to...
or you stroke out.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll notice right there's the graphic with no Arkansas State just for Jeremy.
This hurts.
I have deleted the Red Wolves, especially this week. I have deleted them from my memory bank. They do not exist.
Is it because we almost killed Grayson McCall? Is that why?
Yes, you dirty, cheap, cheating bastards. Look,
high crime.
I saw that live too. I was there. I was there for that.
I did not see a good angle of it. The angle I saw was from the end zone behind it, and you couldn't really see what exactly happened. If it was a dirty hit, if it was a clean hit, if it was because his arm was up, as someone has said. It doesn't matter. I compare it to the New York Yankees. Everyone hates the Yankees because of maybe how good they are, how arrogant they are. But at the end of the day, the better the Yankees are, the more money there is in Major League Baseball, the more interest there is in the sport, the more interest there is nationally in games. Grayson McCall is our New York Yankees, and we got to get the Yankees back. I did see that he had left the Jonesboro Veterinary Clinic and was headed back to Conway.
He's good.
Yeah. They didn't put him down.
No, it was a scary moment. First of all, he was 24 for 27 or 24 for 28 in passing before he got knocked out of the game. He was having a fine game. Now the Coastal Carolina wasn't by any measure of the moment steamrolling over Arkansas State. Arkansas State was doing fine. But that hit, it was like one of those things when you're watching it, Dusty, and you've probably been in that situation before, when the quarterback gets hit and the first thing you hear is the whistles and the flags, and the first thing you say is, "Oh, come on, it's football." And then he's not moving. He was just completely still. It looked like maybe he got pezzed, like maybe something hit him beneath the chin and might have knocked him out. So it was a strange and silent moment there at Centennial Bank Stadium. And I quite frankly, that got those chants a little bit fired up. There was a lot of like wanting to fight during the sort of tense moments there. But managed to finish out the game, and that's it. Coastal came away with the victory.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the moment in the stadium, what the kind of vibe was like. There was a similar thing at the JMU Marshall game. JJ Robertson, was down. They, had to cut his shoulder pads off. It looked bad. Thankfully, both guys are out of the hospital and doing well now. But another one of those scary moments that you don't like to kind of sit through, like when you're at a football game. It kind of makes you stop and think about everything you're actually watching.
Everybody who was there that followed Sun Belt football, you know how it is at some games, especially homecoming games. There's just a lot of people there that are there for that day only. So I don't know if they even paid attention. But the people who understood Sun Belt football recognized that the Sun Belt's leading commodity had just been perhaps tremendously damaged in Jonesboro. So there was a holding of breath, and people were like pretty upset to see him in that condition. And like I said, he was playing an excellent game. Completing all of his passes and looking really sharp. Now they couldn't get the running game going, and they couldn't get much going in the red zone. And Arkansas State actually forced a turnover out of them. There was a lot of good things I was going for Arkansas State. What killed Arkansas State was 2 touchdowns being called back on dumb penalties. But and we don't have to go into that. But we're all happy that he's okay. They took him to the hospital. He's out of the hospital. I wouldn't be surprised if he was back again for this week's game against, I guess, who is it? It's against Marshall.
Yep. The next game after those fiascos, we had Thursday night action. James Madison once again propelling themselves onto the national stage, getting the win over Marshall 20-9. But the story of the game, honestly, was the second half score being 3-2 with JMU edging out off the solo home run in the top of the second.
Yeah, a big struggle of mighty defenses. Shane, were you at the game?
I was.
What'd you see?
Like you said, it was 3-2 there in the second half. It was JMU was just not putting points on the board. They'd moved the ball, and their defense was completely shutting down Marshall. The defense shut out Marshall. Their points came on a safety and a kick return touchdown. JMU moved the ball well enough to score more than 20 points. I think there was some conservative nature, knowing that Marshall just wasn't going to score on JMU, that they didn't take a lot of risks and everything. But there was a lot of baseball jokes in the press box at certain points during the game.
Nobody's original in the press box.
Yeah. So it was about what you expect. But I think the general feeling kind of all along was that, JMU had it in control even when they were leading by a point, 3-2.
Yeah, and do you worry now about Marshall? They're next to last in the Sun Belt East. They start off hot, 4-0. Now they've lost 3 straight games. Now there are 3 straight games to quality opponents. But does Marshall have enough to turn this around?
They're really banged up. I mean, there's just a lot of guys who are either out or playing hurt for Marshall. I mean, Cam Fancher's clearly taken a beating this season. I mean, he's out there playing, but he's hobbling. They don't have Rasheen Ali against JMU. They got, some defensive players who are really good, but they're playing hurt. We talked about JJ Roberts getting injured in that game. Obviously, thankfully not a life-threatening or a, lifestyle-threatening injury, but I don't know when he's going to be back to playing football. Like, Marshall's just, as banged up as any team right now. And I think that's probably the toughest thing for them to overcome.
So, Shane, being at a game in Huntington, we all know the rules. There's no cheering in the press box. But are you allowed to partake in the We Are Marshall?
The time I heard it loudest was after the JJ Roberts injury. I didn't partake in it, but it was kind of like a pretty inspiring moment to hear at that point. I mean,
did you roll a lip quiver? Did you get the Michael Landon chin? Did you? I can't hold it back.
I didn't, but it just kind of like it was kind of like just like, wow, this is like what that's for. I've kind of did Marshall originate that? Did Penn State originate it? Like, I don't know. So many teams have copied it that I've always kind of like just shrugged my head at it. But like in that moment, it was a very cool, like kind of an awe-inspiring thing.
It was not made by a school. It was made by Matthew McConaughey himself.
Yeah.
In a game that on the surface, you're like, God, that's an ugly win. Old Dominion 28, App State 28-21 over App State. If you had to guess Who had more total yards in the game?
Well, it can't be ODU, right? Because ODU's offense is terrible. So it has to be Appalachian State, right? And bear in mind, I didn't see any of this game. Just saw the final score and just shook my head.
Old Dominion, 409. App State, 379.
Wow.
No way in hell you would have told me that beforehand.
No.
The more surprising thing,
Yeah.
time of possession, App State had almost a 6-minute advantage over the Monarchs. And somehow the Monarchs also just about doubled the yards per rush attempt. They ran all over the Mountaineers. I don't know what to think of that. It's almost like circling back to the ULM. It leaves me speechless and unable to comprehend and move forward, because you had Callaway, who rushed for 104 yards for the Monarchs. You had Grant Wilson throwing a touchdown, no picks.
Grant Wilson,
18
no
of
picks?
25, 188 yards. But there was really no one that just you could sit there and circle saying this is why they won the game.
Yeah, even just looking at the social media at the time, it seemed like Appalachian State, the entire game, the fans were resigned to winning a very ugly game against ODU, and then suddenly it was ODU had won. I don't know how the game shaped out. I do know that I had picked Appalachian State to win the Sun Belt East, partly because I had no idea who was going to win the East. But I also had this idea that Sean Clark was a little embarrassed by last year's performance and was going to pull out all the stops to bring the Mountaineers back to their sort of, football glory. I mean, for a long time, the stamp of quality in the Sun Belt when it came to football was Appalachian State. Dead last in the Sun Belt East. Shane, how surprised are you at this, or are you surprised at all?
I'm somewhat surprised. I mean, all the excuses I was making for ULM about why they're not winning close games or pulling those out, none of those apply to App State, do they? I mean, they have the culture and like the fan base and the budget. I mean, like it's surprising. You kind of thought like the shakeups in the offseason were going to make a difference, but there's just something missing when it comes to like closing out these victories that they really should be getting.
Thibs, you got to believe that the hottest coaching seat in the Sun Belt right now has to be sitting beneath Sean Clark, right?
Sean Clark or Will Hall, I think, are your top two. But at the same time, everyone wants to point their finger at Will Hall. I don't think they can afford the 1.7 to buy him out, though. So it's definitely got to be Sean Clark that's sitting on the book of matches there.
Yeah. All I see is we got to get rid of this guy, which is too bad. Sean Clark, I believe, used to play for Appalachian State, right? He was a player for them, kind of a legacy guy. Comes back. Everybody's like, yeah, let's get the old band put together. Just not working in Boone. And it's a little, it kind of reminds me, remember when Georgia Southern was so good and then suddenly they weren't? That's kind of what's going on here with Appalachian State. It's like for so long, Appalachian State, the power in the Sun Belt, definitely the Sun Belt East, suddenly last place. That is just shocking to me, guys.
Let me throw out a scenario to you that I'm not saying will happen, but would be interesting.
Okay.
Based on some things I've heard. If Sean Clark is out at App State, and Georgia State continues their impressive season, would App State look at another alum for that job?
Do you think, I would wonder, you never really see a jump from one Sun Belt program to another. Dusty, have we ever seen that? I don't recall that, but
I think maybe the closest would be the mass exodus of ULM assistants down to Lafayette, or Matt Viator, when he was head coach at ULM, became the whatever fancy title under Napier at Lafayette right afterwards.
Yeah. There was some rumor that A-State's offensive coordinator, who's the guy who coached UMass for a while?
Lashley?
Yeah, Rhett Lashley. He was in line at one point to get that Warhawks job.
Wasn't everyone.
Yeah. Let's just say that occasionally you hear things that if Georgia State won enough games this year for Sean Elliott to get a job elsewhere, both sides might be pretty happy with that result.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about Georgia State, looking at their roster. I mean, Georgia State, the time for Georgia State, and we'll talk about that crazy 20-17 win that they had in Lafayette. The time for Georgia State now is now. That's when everybody's a senior. Everybody who leads that team is a senior or junior, but mostly a senior. This is it for Georgia State. After that, there's no Granger, there's no Marcus, the running
Carroll.
back. Yeah, Marcus Carroll. There's half the defense is gone. I mean, if Jordan, this is the year for Sean Elliott to make some noise and possibly to leave if that's what he wants to do. Because I don't think it's happening again next year. Dusty, do you agree with that?
I would tend to lean that way
Okay.
because it's taken Darren Granger, 3 years to get to this point where he is the Darren Granger that we all know and love and enjoy watching. Do they have another one in the wings? I don't know, because looking at the box score of this past week when they were playing in Lafayette is the first time I've actually seen a name and not just team that actually completed a pass. Michael Colarsado. I know I butchered that and I really don't care. 1 of 1 for 3 yards, baby. There's your new face of the Panthers program.
That could be it. Yeah. So yeah. And let's talk a little bit about that game, Dusty. I didn't get to see it because I was at homecoming at Arkansas State. But there was a lot of chortling amongst Georgia State faithful during that first half. The fans at Cajun Stadium, they're already leaving. It's not even the halftime yet. And just kind of high-fiving each other. Then it sounded a little bit like doom as the Cajuns shut that offense down, and then just started chipping away. Zion Chris with the intercepted ball in the end zone, I believe, with 30 seconds left to finally end the threat. But yeah, Georgia State 6-1, the first team to officially get a bowl eligible. It's time. We got to admit. Do we admit Georgia State's good, or do we say, well, maybe Georgia State's a little lucky?
No, they're good.
Okay, I agree.
They're good, but I don't think I could jump on the bandwagon yet. It just doesn't feel right. Plus, I feel like Sean Elliott's listening to the show, telling us, "You better not pick us because we're doing fine without you. So keep going against us."
Yeah, he's got his headbutts ready for us. But yeah, Granger, I saw got hurt. Did he get laid? Did he get hurt like hurt in the way Grayson McCall got hurt, or was it like, I tweaked an ankle, I'm limping off?
From what I was reading on Twitter, from our friend Brady and other people,
Brady.
I got the feeling like maybe they were worried he was concussed. They went through the protocol. He wasn't. That's why they did have somebody else throw one pass, but he ended up being back in on a later series. Okay. So, I mean, there was a moment where, you're following multiple games and it looks like both he and McCall are out and you're wondering, oh my God, what's happening in the Sun Belt tonight? But Granger ended up coming back. And so we didn't get to find out what else Georgia State might have at quarterback.
Oh, that's too bad. That would have been a handy thing to know. But yeah, what a wild game. And what does that say for the Cajuns? I mean, are the Cajuns... here's the thing about the Sun Belt West. Aside from ULM, which they don't really deserve to be in this category, and Southern Miss, everybody else is sort of in it. Maybe not like realistically in it, but statistically, everybody sort of has a chance, right? They're all one game away from each other. So
in the West, yeah, I would say so. I think also though for the Cajuns, I still think they can pull off another 6-6 year, go to a bowl game and really just kind of rinse repeat from last year. I mean, Zion Chris is just the man. I mean,
you like Zion Chris. That is your new favorite player.
I told you that's in New Orleans even.
I know.
That he was the guy that they just had to hand the reins of the program over to. 106 yards, 1 TD, then ran for another 119 yards. I mean, he's a good dual threat. Maybe not quite at the level of a Levi Lewis yet, but I could see a lot of the similarities.
I was looking at Zion Chris and Arkansas State's quarterback Jalen Rayner, and both of them this week made mistakes that prevented their teams from winning. You had Zion Chris with the end zone interception. You had Jalen Rayner with two very freshman-like interceptions where he's staring down receivers, makes the bad call, throws the pick, and both of those picks ended up becoming Coastal Carolina touchdowns. And that's what you have to do when you have a freshman quarterback, is that you have to let them make those mistakes, because they're going to make those mistakes. This is college football, man. This is big boy football, and you can't go in there as a freshman and not make mistakes. Zion Chris and Jalen Rayner are the future of the Sun Belt for signal callers. Those guys we're going to be watching hopefully for a long time. God willing that NIL doesn't take them away. But those guys are going to be fun to watch hopefully for the next 4 years.
And that's a wrap on the week there, guys.
What? There's nothing else?
That was everything. So let me ask you this, though.
Okay.
We're at the point of the season where we kind of have some standouts. Who would you say is maybe your standout player that you've really seen, you've really liked, maybe that's even surprised you some out of this early going on the season?
Well,
or I say early going at the midseason.
Yeah, we're at the midpoint. For me, it's Marcus Carroll. I mean, he was a guy who's been with Georgia State for a few years now, kind of slowly getting into it. Never thought of him as an elite running back. Now one of the top running backs, not just in the Sun Belt, but in the nation. So my surprise guy has to go to Marcus Carroll.
Shane, who do you have?
I'll do a homer pick and say Jalen Green at JMU.
What a homer. Oh, my God.
I think that is a good pick.
I mean, 13 sacks is just unbelievable. Yeah. We're talking about.
Wait. I'm sorry, Shane. Are you spouting off JMU stats? Because quite frankly, I don't think they exist.
You may be correct. He has more sacks than anyone in the country.
Okay. All right.
Though isn't the NCAA FBS leader, apparently, depending on how you want to phrase that. But okay. No, I mean, just, he's a guy who showed some flashes last year. But if you told me to pick one guy on the JMU defensive line that was going to be putting up these kinds of numbers, he wouldn't have been the one I would have picked necessarily. But he's just been basically unblockable and all over the field. I mean, he's got a pick six. He's got 13 sacks. He's done a little bit of everything.
Thibs, who do you think is sort of the guy that hasn't quite lived up to that hype?
It's going to sound kind of crazy because he's leading the league in passing yards, but I don't think Davis Brin has lived up to that expectation at Georgia Southern. I don't feel that he has really taken over that quarterback position and really aired it out like we kind of got spoiled with last year with Kyle Van Treese. I think he's a good player, don't get me wrong, and I think that their offense is very pass heavy, so his numbers are going to be pretty well inflated. I just don't think that he has really taken over the game, much like we saw last year out of Van Treese. The player, though, that did surprise me was a guy that I really didn't know how he was going to do in the grand scheme of things at Texas State, TJ Finley. I mean, going from LSU to Auburn to then Texas State. I mean, kind of how the mighty have fallen, right? He goes from a huge Power 5 program of LSU where he's going to be the man to Auburn that was really just a train wreck from top to bottom, but still has a lot of money, a lot of budget, a lot of prestige, to then kind of go into San Marcos where, hey, we just hired this FCS coach and he's bringing in all new roster from the portal. We hope it works out. You want to be a part of it. And yeah, it's worked out really well for him.
Yeah. And the funny thing, it was like everybody had their money on Malik Hornsby to take over that role. It's like, oh, wait, well, I have TJ Finley, but hey, Malik Hornsby. And Hornsby's never been the guy. It's like it's Finley from top to bottom. Now, Hornsby comes in every now and then for a play, but Finley has been a Heisman candidate, in my opinion. Shane, who do you think's kind of let you down a little bit?
I mean, the easy answer, maybe the cheating answer, would be Grayson McCall. It might be piling on a little bit to say that. And I think
Because
he's
he has not
in the
lived up to that
discussion,
super
but
hype.
maybe that's just because of the expectations that we put
Yeah.
on him, and he's not necessarily in the best situation. I'm gonna go another way. I'll say TJ Jackson at Troy came in, like, I talked about how there weren't expectations for Jalen Green. TJ Jackson was supposed to be that defensive lineman in the league that was going to be racking up all the sacks and everything. And he's suspended early. Now he's on the field, but his numbers are pretty pedestrian right now. And so, partially of his own doing, getting suspended, I'll say TJ Jackson.
Yeah, and I'll say the guy that's you say disappointing, and sometimes it's just because of the situation you're in, kind of like we had said about Grayson McCall, that he doesn't quite have the same guys they used to have around him, and he has the new coach, so it's not the same situation. It's not all his fault. Frank Gore Jr. is, to me, I thought this guy was going to be the guy that just totally took over every game he plays in. And sometimes he'll have a good game, he'll put up some stats, but he's been shut out a lot. And partly I think it's because you can just key in on the Southern Miss run game, because the passing game's so bad. But man, this is a kind of disappointing year for Frank Gore Jr., especially considering last year when it looked like he was set the conference on fire.
For sure. The last thing that we have our first championship coming up, as the women's soccer season has concluded. South Alabama wins the regular season title. Top 10 teams are headed to Foley, Alabama to match it out. Arkansas State squeaked in at the number 10.
Yeah.
JMU right in the middle of the pack. ODU fell to number 3 in the seeding. ULM at number 5. I expect the Warhawks to make a little bit of noise, not too much.
You like your Warhawks.
Wouldn't surprise me, though, to see ODU and James Madison once again atop the women's soccer standings.
Thibs, who are the 4 that did not make the cut?
You would ask me a trick question like
that. For some reason, I thought you had those statistics in your hand, but you did not.
The Raging Cajuns.
Oh, okay.
Finishing the season 3-6. They were 3-6 in conference, 6-8-2 overall. Marshall, 2-7 in Sun Belt, 7-8-1 overall. Troy, 1-6-2 in conference, 1-4-1. That was division. 6-9-2 overall. Coastal Carolina, Goose, 7-2 in conference, 3-11-2 overall.
Wow. All right, so it's set. It's thus. When does the tournament start?
It is coming up on the 30th of October. So Monday.
Okay. All right, that's exciting. It'll be fun to watch.
All games on ESPN Plus, your favorite channel.
It's really the best channel in the Sun Belt, aside from CBS Sports. That's good stuff.
I don't know. It seemed like the production of the Georgia Southern ULM game, everyone was raving about the score bug that Georgia Southern had up with the Sunbelt logo and better graphics, better in-game scoreboard. I got to go back and watch it again.
It was fantastic.
Who broadcast that? Was that ESPN
Georgia
Plus?
Southern.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'll have to ask around about like who put together that package. 'Cause, yeah, they had graphics like, later this week on ESPN Plus, like this women's soccer game, and like with the logo, it looked legit.
Yeah. All right, it's nice to see that.
Yeah, and they also apparently do a Clay Helton coaches show on ESPN Plus. I don't know how many other.
I did see that. I
other
was a little
G5.
jealous.
Yeah,
like Coach Jones, Butch Jones, he has a coach's show, but it's like on local TV. So it's how come he gets the plus?
Because he has a better plug, promo, and parting shot, Jeremy.
Do I get to go first on that?
We would love for you to go first.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about it's almost like a question to Shane too, because maybe he knows a little bit more. We talked a little bit about it earlier about the NCAA So I'm like, I do, I write previews of each game in the Sun Belt. And a lot of times, I'll look through NCAA.com and look at the stats because they do have up-to-date stats. Who's got the best defenses, where they rank, the offenses, passing, all that stuff. So a couple of weeks ago, I started looking through that, could not find JMU in the defenses or the offenses or anything. And I was just, oh, well, there must be some sort of just strange error going on with the NCAA. I didn't even really think much of it until I saw that Coach Signetti about a week later was kind of setting the NCAA on fire for saying it is ridiculous. It was a response to one of your tweets, Shane, about how NCAA is no longer accepting the statistics from JMU, which they have been doing for the last year and a half. Suddenly, no, the statistics for JMU don't count. They don't rate. How is that possible? I mean, I don't usually bust on the NCAA. I feel like busting on the NCAA is low-hanging fruit. We've been doing it for 60 years. I get tired of it. I actually wish there was a strong NCAA that would take care of some stuff, that would make some decisions. But this is one of the weirdest decisions I've ever seen the NCAA make. Shane, do you have any insight on this?
Yeah, well, this is partly what I was talking about before. Nobody had anticipated a team making a transition like JMU. So like JMU played a full FBS schedule for 2 years. The reason they don't put transitioning teams in the stats leaders is because a lot of times they play 9 games against FCS teams in the first year to a transition.
And Georgia State was like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that makes a little bit of sense. And so like last year, you may have noticed JMU was included in those leaders until very late in the season.
Oh, okay.
From what I've heard, very late in the season, when some SIDs start looking about how they're going to pump up their guy for awards, all of a sudden realize, hey, my quarterback's not in the top 10 in this category, but he would be if they were doing it by the book.
Yeah, if Todd Centeo wasn't.
And that was when like the JMU stats disappeared, and then they didn't include them this year.
So there is madness to the method, but still,
but it's still a situation where Jalen Green, not only has 13 sacks, he's doing it against a strength of schedule that's up there with Michigan.
Yeah,
and like
don't understand it at all, Dusty. And that is my parting shot.
That's a great looking Boobcat shirt, by the way, there, Jeremy.
Isn't it though? It fits really well. It says Boobcat, but it makes my chest look svelte.
Shane, please give us your plug promo parting shot.
I'll build off that parting shot. That of all the things we've been talking about with JMU, the NCAA, whether they should or shouldn't do whatever, like the stat thing is there's absolutely no reason to not make an exception for their stats. Let their guy be the nation's leader in sacks. Let their defense be the nation's leader in, rush defense. Like there's absolutely no reason to not make an adjustment on that one. That's my parting shot for this one.
It's not even petty. By the way, I was talking to my brother, Rex Steele, at the homecoming at Arkansas State. And he notoriously does not listen to this podcast. He just refuses. He's like, I don't want to hear your voice. And I said, well, why don't you listen to the podcast? He says, what do you guys do? Just talk about how great JMU is? I said, sometimes, yeah. Dusty, your parting shot, plug, or promo?
My only hope is when EA finally releases the new NCAA college football that my Xbox is still alive to enjoy the long await of that game coming out. Second of all, I hope that it actually has the ability to have JMU in the game and it actually count. Plus, I want the old days of being able to play as a true FCS 1AA opponent because I want to be the one that brings the glory back to Northwestern State, Louisiana, winning the Southland Conference and going on to win the 1AA trophy in Frisco, Texas, home of JMU's first ever bowl game against Jacksonville State.
That's a good way to end.